AION 2 is a free-to-play Korean MMORPG developed and published by NCSoft. Hearing that one sentence is enough for a lot of MMORPG players to say, "F this, I'm out." And I completely understand. Pay to win is shit, nobody likes it, it ruins the integrity and fun of every game it exists in. And if there's one thing Korean MMO studios have mastered over the years, it's making absolutely gorgeous MMORPGs with incredible combat, beautiful worlds, and monetization systems that slowly drain both your wallet and your will to live. That's just a reputation they've built. The sad part is that we helped build it. Collectively, for years, we've complained about predatory monetization and pay to win. And then a launch day comes around, we buy founder packs, we buy battle passes, we swipe for convenience, we keep playing, and 6 months later another Korean MMO gets announced with even more monetization because, well, why wouldn't it? The previous one made millions. So whether we like it or not, this is the reality modern MMORPGs live in. AAA MMOs are incredibly expensive to build, they're expensive to maintain, and they're expensive to update. And free-to-play games need to make money somehow. But does that justify predatory monetization? Absolutely not. Which brings us back to the question, what does pay to win actually mean? Because if you ask 10 MMO players to define it, you're probably getting 10 different answers. Everyone has their own definition. Mine is actually pretty simple. If you can spend real money to gain progression in any way, shape or form, it's pay to win. Simple. And by that definition, every major MMORPG today is pay to win. The only difference is that some are just significantly worse than the others. Which is exactly why the question isn't, is AION 2 pay to win? The real question is, how much? And that's where things start getting interesting. Because yes, AION 2 absolutely has pay to win systems. The optional subscription, technically you don't need it, but good luck without it. Pay $15 a month and suddenly you can use one of the most basic MMORPG features ever created, the marketplace. Because apparently in 2026 buying and selling items is a premium feature. Great, we're off to a fantastic start. So yes, before we even look at anything else, AION 2 is already pay to win by my definition. But how bad does it actually get? And that's where things become a lot more interesting. But before we break down exactly how AION 2 monetization works, I want to give a quick shoutout to Gear Up Booster. If you've been playing online games, especially MMOs, you probably know how frustrating bad connections can be. Random lag spikes, unstable ping, routing issues can completely ruin the experience. That's actually why I started using Gear Up Booster, because it is not just a regular VPN, it's a gaming-focused network accelerator with dedicated servers and optimized routing technology designed to reduce ping, fix connection issues, and keep your gameplay more stable. So if you're planning to give AION 2 a try before the global release, or you just want a more stable connection in your online games, check out the link in the description. You can download it, create an account, and try it completely free with a 24-hour trial. And if you decide to keep using it, use code FRESHY at checkout to get 10% off any subscription plan. So let's start with the biggest offender, the currency exchange. You buy premium currency with real money. You sell that premium currency to another player for in-game gold. And congratulations, you just skipped a big portion of the grind. In-game gold in AION 2 isn't just another currency you occasionally use to repair your gear. Gold is everything. You can buy equipment, you can buy crafting materials, you can buy enhancement materials, you can buy consumables, you can buy items that feed into all the different progression systems the game has. Basically, if you have enough gold, you can dramatically speed up your character's progression. And that's why, in my opinion, the currency exchange is a real source of almost every pay-to-win discussion surrounding AION 2. Because the cash shop itself, honestly, it's pretty light. You've got cosmetics, storage upgrades, character slots, various vouchers, quality of life items. Nothing there really shocked me. The problem is giving players a direct path from their credit card to in-game gold. Now obviously there are other systems, battle passes for example, but here's the interesting thing. You don't actually have to spend real money to buy one. You can buy premium currency from other players using in-game gold. Which sounds pretty free-to-play friendly until you remember that you still need a subscription if you actually want to use the marketplace. Now before somebody misunderstands me, I'm not saying AION 2 doesn't have pay to win, it absolutely does. What I'm saying is that I think people are focusing on the wrong system. If tomorrow NCSoft removes the ability to exchange premium currency for gold, I genuinely think the conversation around AION 2 monetization would look completely different. Because that's the system connecting almost everything together. The reason why I don't think this is such a big deal is because AION 2 has PvE and PvP gear, while being mainly focused on PvE. This of course doesn't magically remove pay to win, but it does change how that pay to win affects different types of players. If you're someone who mainly enjoys PvE, running dungeons, doing raids, collecting gear, playing with your guild, then honestly, someone else spending thousands of dollars doesn't affect your experience nearly as much as people make it sound. Could they progress faster than you? Absolutely. Will they probably have better gear sooner? Of course. But most PvE content isn't designed around competing against other players. You're competing against bosses. And as long as you meet the required gear score and understand the mechanics, you'll still be able to clear all the content. Sure, there are PvE leaderboards, but let's be honest for a second, does anybody who's even remotely normal actually care about PvE leaderboards? Half of the time they're just giant advertisements for whoever spent the most money or played it the most hours. Cool, congratulations, you killed the boss 37 seconds faster than everyone else. And here's another thing I actually like. When a new gear tiers are released, you don't have to start completely from scratch. You can transfer your enhancement levels with a 100% success rate to the next tier. That alone removes one of the most frustrating progression systems. So yes, pay to win still exists, but for PvE players, I honestly think it feels more like paying to progress faster than paying to win. PvP on the other hand is a completely different story, because that's where the real problems begin. The good news is that PvP gear actually matters, a lot. A whale wearing the absolute best PvE gear in the game isn't automatically going to dominate PvP. Someone with properly built PvP gear, even if it's the lower tier, can still beat them because of the PvP specific stats and modifiers. I actually think that's a good design. But then NCSoft immediately shoots themselves in the foot. Because the strongest PvP weapon is a crafted PvE weapon. That kind of defeats the whole point. And then it gets even worse. Medals, which are part of progressing your PvP gear, can also be purchased using gold. That's where the line starts getting crossed for me. Because now we're no longer talking about someone progressing through PvE a little faster. Now we are talking about systems that directly influence competitive PvP progression. That's a much bigger issue. Now let me ask you something. Imagine a completely different version of AION 2. No premium currency, no way to spend real money whatsoever. Now imagine you're a casual player. You get home from work, you play for 2 hours every evening, you're having fun. Meanwhile, there's another guy. He plays 16 hours a day, every single day. He has 10 alt characters funneling resources into his main, and 3 weeks later he absolutely destroys you. His gear is miles ahead, his progression is miles ahead. You don't stand a chance. So let me ask you this, does that suddenly feel fair just because he didn't spend any money? Or does it feel almost exactly the same as getting destroyed by a whale? Because I think that's where MMO discussions sometimes lose all nuance. People often treat every progression gap as if it's the same problem. It isn't. Being outscaled because somebody has infinitely more free time than you doesn't suddenly become fun. And being outscaled because somebody has infinitely more money than you also isn't fun. They're different problems, but both of them can make players feel left behind. The goal shouldn't be eliminating every possible progression gap, that's impossible. The goal should be making sure those gaps don't become so ridiculous. And I think that's exactly where AION 2 still has room to improve. Here's how I think this can be fixed. First, remove the ability to use the market from the paid subscription. I know it is to prevent bots from ruining the economy, but why the fuck are these AAA studios in 2026 still so incompetent in developing ways to fight against bots? Fixing this will allow true free-to-play players to gradually progress without literally spending a cent. I know, this is shocking to hear, not being able to generate money. And while we are on the topic of the sub, you didn't even have the decency to include regional prices. Founders packs and subscriptions having one fixed price in every country is the next level of greed. Next, we just gotta get rid of the ability to buy gold with premium currency, and we need to limit what can be sold on the market. Being able to just straight up buy gear is crazy. Limiting some hard to obtain materials needed to craft best gear should only come from drops in raids and dungeons. PvP also needs one simple change, making dedicated PvP gear actually matter. Buff PvP weapons or nerf crafted PvE weapons inside PvP, and stop medals from being tradable. If the best PvP gear is supposed to represent time, effort and skill, then let players actually earn it. Whales can still progress faster in plenty of other areas, but competitive PvP should be one place where dedication actually matters. When Korean players were asked what they thought about AION 2's monetization, the overwhelming response was positive. They liked it. The Korean MMORPG market has had years to normalize monetization systems that Western players have been pushing back against for just as long. Neither side is objectively wrong, they're simply different markets with different expectations. The problem starts when you assume one audience will automatically accept what the other does. Because they won't. Western MMO players don't care whether Korean players think the monetization is perfect. They're going to judge the game based on their own expectations. And if NCSoft still doesn't understand that, after everything that's happened over the last decade, then I honestly don't know what else to say. But when you actually think about it, are players just mad because of the pay to win, or is there something deeper here? Because AION 2 is actually a decent AAA quality MMORPG. I'd argue the best MMORPG we had in recent years in terms of graphics, combat and overall gameplay. So surely pay to win can't be the only thing causing problems for all of these players. And I do believe it's just hate towards NCSoft. The years of betrayal, lies, uncontrollable greed, predatory monetization and maximum pay to win. The years of ruining reputation, breaking trust from players and not learning from previous failed projects in the West. Making the same mistakes, creating problems to sell a solution, purposefully designing systems to waste your time and drain your wallet once you reach the free-to-play wall, forcing you to either spend money or quit. In reality, you have World of Warcraft, Final Fantasy and Guild Wars, among the few mainstream MMORPGs that have cash shop, battle passes, currency exchange, subscriptions, paid expansions and a box price on top of all of it. All three are pay to win by definition as well. The difference is those three have established themselves a long time ago as free-to-play friendly games, with a great progression system and a non-grindy daily routines. Naturally, over time they have added things to keep the revenue flowing, but they have never crossed into the paying for power territory. And then on the other end of the spectrum you have three most recent mainstream MMORPGs, Black Desert Online, Lost Ark and Throne of Liberty. They have a very predatory monetization, heavy pay to win topped off by a crazy RNG systems and the daily grinds that turn into a second job. These games are still holding decent daily numbers, but I do believe these are all the players who have either spent thousands of hours grinding or thousands of dollars whaling. And they simply cannot justify quitting. Otherwise, all of this was a complete waste of time. But it does also help that each game has at least one fun gameplay aspect that keeps the players engaged. So what do I actually think is going to happen? Honestly, I'll be there on day one. I'll buy the subscription, I'll probably put hundreds of hours into the game, and if you're watching this video, there's a pretty good chance you will too. As much as we complain about Korean MMOs, we keep coming back, because the truth is, we have been starving for a genuinely modern AAA MMORPG for years. I genuinely wanted to succeed. I want NCSoft to prove me wrong, because underneath all the monetization discussions, I actually think AION 2 is genuinely a good MMORPG. The combat is fun, the world looks fantastic, the classes feel great. The game has real potential. But if NCSoft thinks the exact same monetization philosophy that works in Korea is automatically going to work in the West, they're making a huge mistake. Because Korea and the West are two completely different MMORPG markets. What players are willing to tolerate is completely different, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with adapting your game for a different audience. So here's my message to NCSoft. You still have time. Listen to the feedback. Not because Western players are always right, but because they are the ones you're asking to invest thousands of hours into your game. At least meet them halfway. Start building trust again. Because I honestly don't think pay to win is the biggest threat to AION 2. I think your own reputation is. And fixing that starts long before launch.